to Cardiff's hubs and libraries, which will see reduced library openings and paid staff replaced by volunteers. What do you say to Cardiff Council?
No more cuts!
Okay.
No more cuts!
Okay, there is one man who I'm going to hand you over to now. You may know him. His name is Adam Johannes. He is the co-convener of Cardiff People's Assembly, and it is he who has brought these three campaigns together so that we are here today in a united voice to send our clear message. Everybody give a very loud round of applause to Adam Johannes.
Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. We're just going to wait about 10 minutes. There's still a few people coming, and then we'll start the mass reading. So be patient. But I just want to run you through. We're going to have a mass reading for around half an hour. Then we're going to march up to St. David's Hall and sing Happy Birthday. This is the 40th anniversary of the official opening of St. David's Hall. Then we're going to march, swing towards Waterstones, march up Trinity Street, around St. John's Church, and then we're going to end with a rally outside the museum, where we have a few speakers talking about defending our museum, defending St. David's Hall, and defending libraries and our heritage. So thanks everyone for coming, and just wait a few seconds for everyone to arrive, and then we'll kick off. Thank you.
So my name is Madhu, and I'd like to welcome you all today to the People's March for Culture in Cardiff. Thank you everybody for coming. I'd like to hear a really loud cheer from the crowd, please. Fantastic. Right, so you all liked the storm thing earlier, so as I said, thank you for coming. It isn't the best day today. The rain has stopped. It is a bit windy, but it's not stormy. Remember, it doesn't matter about stormy weather. When a protest matters, we are the storm. We are here to have our voices heard. And I'd like to hear your voices again, but a bit louder this time, please. Fantastic. Okay, so we are here today to send a very clear message to Cardiff Council. And we are here to tell them that we oppose the cuts that they have proposed in their consultation to us. They can't hear me alone on this speaker in City Hall. They need all of your voices to resonate through the air to carry it right over to City Hall. So when I hold the microphone high, I want you all to shout as loud as you can, no cuts, okay? So we are here today to send a very clear message to Cardiff Council that we oppose the privatisation of City Hall. We oppose the closure of the Museum of Cardiff. We oppose the cuts to Cardiff's hubs and libraries that will see the libraries shut for more hours and even days every week. And it will also see paid library staff lose their jobs to volunteers. We oppose these cuts. No cuts. And again? No cuts. Okay, now I'm going to hand over to Adam Johannes. He is the co-convener of Cardiff People's Assembly, and he is the person who has brought these three campaigns together today in unity. So, over to Adam Johannes.
Okay, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming here today. I just wondered who's brought a book today, if you could put up your hands. Because what we like is that people who brought books, maybe you come to the front, and we're just to start, we're going to try and do a mass reading where we all read from our book all at the same time. So if anyone has a book, if they want to come forward slightly, maybe to stand around here. As maybe people just want to hold their books up in the air, first of all, just a symbol of the struggle for knowledge and education. Now, I don't know what books other people brought, but the book I brought is called The Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James, and it's an account of the first successful slave revolt in history on the island of Haiti in the 18th century. Okay, so if people can just hold their books up again, and then if people bring their books down again and open them, and we all read at the same time. And I'm going to turn the mic off, because it'll be a bit weird, because I'll be louder than everyone else otherwise. Shall I count down? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, read. Okay, we can finish now. People just hold up their books again, once again, and then we have a round of applause for our readers. No cuts! I'll hand back to Madhu.
Hello again. Okay, so we have some wonderful speakers who have come here today to talk to you all and to explain to you why they support the campaigns. And the first speaker we have is Saoirse Anton, and she is a writer, poet, performer and producer. She has a lot of experience in library campaigning back in Ireland, and she passionately supported library workers there, and she has some wonderful experiences and words to share with you all, so I shall pass over to Saoirse.
Hello. Given I'm a poet, I thought I would stick to the stuff I know and give you a poem about libraries as well as a few thoughts. Because I believe in the Dewey Decimal System 398.2, fairy tales. But I have a story for you to rival Rapunzel, Hansel, Gretel, Snow White, all the better because it's true. If it were a fairy tale, I would now say once upon a time, far, far away, but instead once upon a Saturday morning. Once upon a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the doors to magical worlds were opening. They looked quite normal. You probably walked past them, you might even have walked in, because this story begins at the door of a library. Shiny new card clutched in paw, a small girl is about to discover it all. Stomping on confident little legs through this place she knows is hers, she reaches the desk, almost taller than her, and tells the librarian, "I love trains." They set off through the shelves in search of the numbers 388. But wait, the little girl spies old Mrs. Jones from up the road, at the computer learning to code. She waves a hello and shows off her shiny new library card, and asking several questions, surprisingly hard to answer. Our little girl is back on track with her quest. Down shelves of poetry, history, geography they walk until, with a happy cheer, the numbers 388 are spied. And happier still to see beside the shelf someone already leafing through pages. Our little girl introduces herself and finds that she is speaking to a train driver. Well, could her day get better? Questions pour in torrents, and in minutes she learns from her new friend what it is to be a refugee. And he tells her that this library is his safe and welcome space to be. Books stacked in eager arms, little girl and librarian return to the desk. with only small diversions, to watch the knitting circle natter and to learn to say hello in French. Her books checked out, stamped and in hand, our little girl and her dad say goodbye. Until next week, when she will stomp on confident little legs through this place she knows is hers, until she reaches the desk, almost taller than her, and tells the librarian, "I love fairy tales." And they again explore the shelves for numbers 398.2. Diolch yn fawr. Now, every fairy tale has its difficult point. You see, the dragon is perched on the castle, billowing fire at our hero, or the wicked witch has poisoned the apple, and the evil ruler has ruined the kingdom. And right now we are in that moment. The cultural life of our city is in peril. Cardiff Council plans to cut library services, reducing hours and replacing trained library staff with volunteers. They plan to sell off St David's Hall and close the Cardiff Story Museum. And we don't have a knight in shining armour to come to the rescue. We don't have a fairy godmother to sweep in and change the day. We have to turn this story around ourselves. Our libraries are a vital public resource, one of our vanishingly few public spaces where people can gather, access help and resources and community without being expected to spend money. So cuts to libraries' resources and staffing is a short-sighted measure that will really have devastating effects, both on our individual lives and on so many people, and the quality of our society as a whole. Libraries are hubs of community and of care, and those two things will, in a very real way, be what makes us survive this current Tory-led crisis. We need to fight for them, and we need to write a happy ending for this story. Over and over lately, I found a certain song running through my mind, and I'm going to leave you with some of its timeless lines. Because hearts starve as well as bodies, so give us bread, but give us roses. And libraries in their way provide both, so give us bread, give us roses, and protect our libraries. Diolch yn fawr.
That was excellent. Thank you, Saoirse. So, our next speaker is Alice Shing. 8 years ago today, we all, well, some of you maybe, some of you might be new to it, but we stood here in this very spot, campaigning to save our libraries. When Cardiff Council planned to close 7 of the city community libraries. And we campaigned hard and we won. But there was one library that didn't get to reopen its doors, and that was Save Roath Library. Alice Shing was the campaigner and the lead campaigner for that, but she didn't give up. I would say that Alice stepped forward. I would say that Alice is a champion because she managed to ensure that there is still a library service in her ward for the various communities that used to use Roath Library. At the heart of Alice's campaigning, it's all about the people. It's the mother, the child, it's the elderly patron of the library, it's the student, and it's the library worker. It's about the people, the everyday people. It's not the politicians. Alice speaks for the people. And I'd like to pass you over to Alice Shing. Very louder round of applause, please.
Hello. I'm a bit nervous because it's been a while. I see a lot of families today, and as Madhu's mentioned, I campaigned a few years ago and my children were younger, so families and young children are close to my heart. They're important, libraries are important places for ordinary families. A common misconception is they just provide musty, dusty books, but we know different. Studies show that at least 1 in 5 women who have given birth experience depression and anxiety in the first year. A safe and free place to go in the day where it's possible to meet and see other carers and toddlers is vital. Libraries don't cost anything, they're accessible in a very practical sense. space for pushchairs during story time, and also has accessible toilets, nappy changing facilities, and something to do for 30 minutes, half an hour, when you're feeling isolated at home, caring 24/7 for a young child, or maybe more, and just feeling alone. When caring for children, bus fares, soft play and classes can get really expensive. The reason why I mention mothers in particular is the harsh reality is women become financially vulnerable after having kids. It may be due to a lack of childcare support, or wage differences, or cultural expectations, but a lot of women end up going part-time from work or becoming full-time carers when children are young. Their spouse often continues working and building their careers, which then compounds the wage gap between men and women. And eventually, when the mums have to return to work, they're building their careers again after a long gap, perhaps restarting at the bottom. We end up with a society with inequality embedded, reproducing itself in every generation. Women make up half the population and need more help keeping family-friendly spaces open and free if we want to see our workforce and economy thrive. But it's not just women and young families who benefit from libraries, of course. Overall, mental health problems have been rising, and people most affected are young people, people from LGBT plus communities, people who are from minority ethnic groups, people who are isolated. And after COVID and the lockdowns, protecting mental health is even more important for everyone. We know how important that libraries are, playing a role in reducing isolation and supporting mental health. There aren't many places which are open to literally everyone for free. Schools use them. You can go to a library one week and learn how to crochet or handle a snake the next. Friends and neighbours get together at meetings. For some people, it might be their only chance of a conversation in a week. A library has no other agenda than to help raise people's education, quality of life, social connections and agency. Libraries are not a cure-all for everything, of course. We need more than libraries, but we can say without doubt that libraries provide an incredible amount of value, and if anything, we need to stop thinking of libraries as negotiable hostages in every round of cuts. We need to stop thinking of librarians as replaceable machines. It's not just about books. After all, we don't go to hospitals or support groups and scan ourselves in and out. We go because we actually need to see a person who is trained to help. Libraries are for human beings in the pursuit of human activities. We are not data. We need to prioritise libraries and the staff to work in them as essential to a society if we want to flourish in it. Therefore, if you are tired, like I am, of seeing inequality grow by the day, I invite you to demand the strongest support from our councillors and politicians to uphold our best resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. I think should we have rouse ourselves again and have another no cuts from you all? What do we say? No cuts! Cardiff Council? No cuts! What do we say? No cuts! Fantastic. Now, Mike Church, would you like to come and stand next to me? I can't see where you are. Ah, there you are. Okay, so Mike is a children's author and poet, but he's also a very experienced library campaigner, and he was part of the Save Rhydyfelin Library campaign. I don't know if many of you know, but the campaigners there even once chained themselves to the library units in the library in a very strong protest against closure. They did close the library, but this particular campaign, the Save Rhydyfelin Library campaign, they fought the RCT Council and they forced them to reopen the library. They mounted a very strong and successful legal campaign there. And so a big round of applause to Mike. I'm sure he'll have some wonderful words to share with us.
No, in fact, all the words I wanted to say have just been said, so thank you very much. Now, I'm actually here from South Wales Police to say you're making too much noise and this protest is about to be disbanded. No. We do live in a time where we really need to protest, don't we? Because there's so much going on in terms of people's wages, the Enough is Enough campaign, and now they're coming for, the pillars of culture. And when that happens, you're in dangerous territory. Heinrich Heine, the German poet, once said, "Where they burn books, they will one day burn people also." It's quite a famous quote. Now, we're not at the stage of burning people yet, but we're getting there where books are sort of... Do you remember in 2014 as well, when they tried to stop prisoners having access to books? I was working in Park Prison in Bridgend this week, and for those prisoners, books are an absolutely vital lifeline to rehabilitation, so it's really important. And Chris Grayling, I think, was at the time, wasn't it? And they had to sort of, great face from the gentleman. They did make a sort of
fighting to fix.
That's the police. Look, the police are trying to destroy us. It's brilliant. They're coming through. Anyway, so I'm just going to read for you. I'm just going to do a campaigning poem. In fact, it's very similar. I think you've stolen it.
On this test.
No, we're not buying any. But anyway, so I'm just going to do this because when we did get on the PM programme on Radio 4, and I do also want to say that was in 2014, only 9 years ago. And
our bodies are 5 senses.
We do have 5 senses, yeah. Thank you. Just reminding us. No, but actually,
our body has a sense of its own. If
I don't know what's going on there. Shall I just carry on? Yeah, what I do want to say is I want to dedicate what I'm going to do now, the poem I'm doing now, to... There was 4 of us who, with a combined age of about 750, there was 4 of us who chained ourselves to Rhydyfelin Library and got probably the best newspaper headline. I'll just show you this because I've kept it and I thought I'd bring it today, because we had the best newspaper headline ever in the Ponty and Lantrissan Observer: "Police call to library protest." Right? Brilliant. Because, and our library did get saved, but sadly, and this is the sad bit, that's why I'm going to dedicate this poem to 2 of our members, Myrig and Mary, have since passed away, and they will be turning in their graves at the fact that we're back here again, campaigning still to do this. Right, now, I'm going to do this anyway. Now, this poem, you've had the warm-up for this, it's called, we campaigned with this, and we read it at the Senate and performed it there, so... If you are really loud, because we got some interference...
Bad decision to...
It is a bad decision, yeah, it's a bad decision for you to actually be interrupting, such an essential protest. Right, okay, so this poem, actually, all you need to do is when I say but, okay, when I say but, you just come out with what we've been trained for: don't cut libraries. Ready? Let's have a practice, see if we can drown that out. But... don't cut libraries! But! don't cut libraries! But! don't cut libraries!
Don't cut museums either!
Is this one work? Oh, there we are. The wonders of technology. I will just read this. I said about Heinrich Heine, which was a few years ago, but actually the modern Caitlin Moran, who's the comedian and writer, she wrote this about libraries, and I do love this quote: "A library in the middle of a community is a cross between an emergency exit, a life raft, and a festival. They are cathedrals of the mind, hospitals of the soul, theme parks of the imagination. On a cold, rainy island, they are the only sheltered public spaces where you are not a consumer, but a citizen instead." Isn't that a great quote? Caitlin Moran. Yeah. And now we'll come to the poem and then I'll be gone. Ready? But don't cut libraries. Cut cake, cut cloth, cut hair, but don't cut libraries. Cut diamonds, cut cheese, cut your first teeth, but don't cut libraries. Cut energy bills, cut private health, cut private schools, cut politicians' expenses, cut tax loopholes, cut non-dom status, cut royalty, but don't cut libraries. Cut corners, cut the mustard, cut cards, cut no ice, cut loose, cut a dash, cut your losses, but don't cut libraries. You'll cut me to the quick, you'll cut me to the core, you'll cut me dead if you cut libraries. Cut back by all means, but let's cut the crap and let's cut a deal. Let's cut millions from the very rich, but don't cut libraries. Thank you very much.
Well, what do we say? We say don't. Thank you, Mike. That was brilliant. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce you all to Sophie Bouchard. Sophie is a writer and a creative writing teacher. Her debut book, This Is Not Who We Are, was published by Seren Books. And in 2022, that book was listed in the Wales Arts Review as one of the top 10 books. So Sophie is a very, very passionate defender of libraries and the arts all round, as they have played an integral part in your development. I'd like to hand over the microphone to Sophie.
Can you all hear me? My son keeps telling me, in fact he was telling me on the train on the way here, that I'm always too quiet and you can't hear me. So I am a storyteller, I'm a writer, so I thought I'd tell you the story, my story in fact, so I hope it won't bore you, but you'll see why in a minute. I wanted to be here today because libraries have been a big part of my life since childhood, to the point I can say with certainty that I would not stand here as a writer today if it wasn't for libraries. I remember my mother taking 8-year-old me to sign up for my first library card. It felt like a rite of passage. My mother handed me over, there's some wind, handed me over to the senior librarian. She was a grey bespectacled woman with a severe haircut and the gentlest of smiles, who guided me through blue glass panel doors. I can do this. She guided me through glass panel doors into a maze of neatly shelved books, their colourful spines reflecting the light from the window into warm geometric patterns on the orange and yellow carpet. I remember the mixture of excitement and absolute terror at the sheer volume of books and the way the librarians patiently explained the book classification system to me, the smile never leaving her lips. So that you can find everything on your own, she said. It was a lot of power to hand a child, the ability to access knowledge firsthand without a parent or a teacher telling you what to think. It's one that we take for granted nowadays because of the internet, but I was born in the 70s, at the late end of the 70s, and back then it was quite special. So to me, it was so transformative. You see, the reason my mother took me to the library that day is because the school had called her in to tell her that my spelling was atrocious. I had 0 as permanent mark in spelling, to the point that the school had had a special meeting that week to consider the possibility of getting me to repeat a year. They don't do that anymore, but in my days there was no sets, and we used to repeat years when we went very good. And so, as what I thought would be a punishment, my mother dragged me to the library that day. The teacher had recommended that I should read as much as possible, as you would go to the doctor and get a spoon of cod liver oil to feel better. And that through reading maybe something would click. He didn't seem convinced himself, but nonetheless. After that, every Saturday afternoon for many years, I headed on my own to the local library. That was possibly the only thing I did as a child on my own without supervision, so it was quite special. I hid between the shelves with a book, traveling back in time or in the future, visiting different places. I sat at the round table with Arthur. I went on a journey with Frodo and Sam. Once I spent a whole Saturday inside a beehive having lunch with the Queen. And you know, I don't remember the name of that book, but I can remember the impression to this day. Eventually, something did click, and when I'd read my way through the small children's section of the local library, the smiling librarian nodded, and with a wink, she handed me a special pass so I could access the grown-up libraries before the grand age of 12. I still have it. So she then directed me towards a shelf and indicated to me that on that shelf I would find something that would be a good place to start. Today I regularly attend libraries. As a writer, this is where I find the details that I weave into the stories I write. As a creative writing teacher, I'm always amazed at the powerful role a library as a community space can play to shelter those who need warmth, provide a place to read, find work, learn new skills, or do homework. Somewhere to connect with others also. The fact that through the library I can offer creative writing classes for free means bringing together individuals who might otherwise have remained isolated. There is Gwen, who recently lost her husband and needed somewhere to articulate her grief and to make new friends. There is Eva, who is a mother of 3, and for whom the 2-hour session on a Saturday is the opportunity to reconnect with herself and rant about the pressures of motherhood. And there is Graham, finally, recently retired and struggling to fill all the time which has come to replace a busy career in an open plan office. Graham, who at the age of 68 has suddenly discovered poetry and is now having daily conversation with our local librarians about reading all the classics. I wanted to be here today also because I am a mother who worries about the erosion of all those places of culture, St. David, the Cardiff Museum, and this here library, and about what this erosion will do to the communities built around these important spaces, and especially to our children's ability to learn, to dream, and find their place in the world. I've been asked if I would read some of my writing. Instead, I've brought you the writing of my son Theo, who's over there, who's 12 years old, who wrote, because a mother's right is to shame your child, because Theo for the Stedford in his school this year has written his first short story, even though he keeps telling me he doesn't like writing that much, but I'm incredibly proud. And I wanted to show you that as somebody who was born in a different country and has made Wales my home 20 years ago, this is the sort of story that storytelling and reading and writing has done in our household, at least. So I will try to do it justice. Sorry. It's called An Adventure with a Welsh Dragon. Mum, good start, strong start. Mum dropped me off in the car park of Cardiff Central Station with a rucksack containing a change of clothes for 5 days, money for a train ticket to Haverfordwest, and Bumpy's phone number. I was excited to be getting out of the city. Holiday at Bumpy's and Nan's were more fun than spending day alone at the flat whilst Mum was looking for a job. I wish Dad was here to play football with, but he seemed to be on an eternal business trip. Right now, he was somewhere in America, Florida, or Hawaii maybe. I couldn't remember for sure. The lady behind the glass panel handed me my ticket and I climbed the stairs to platform 6, 2 at a time. The train was already there. I had lots of time, so found my seat, threw my bags on the top shelf and got comfy by the window. After a few minutes, the train started moving. The red brick houses quickly transformed into lush green fields. In the distance, I saw a colossal red blob speeding across the plain. Impossible, I thought. No creature that big could move that fast. Suddenly, the blob changed direction, heading straight for the track. This mammoth of a beast beast had mighty talons, a swirling tail with a spear tip on its end. Its skin was covered with shiny, vibrant red scales. A dragon, I thought? No way. I jumped to my feet, grabbed my bag, and sprinted to the door of the coach. I swung it open, looked out, and without thinking, jumped with my eyes closed, bracing for the hard impact. Instead, I landed on a warm, smooth surface. Surprised, I opened my eyes to see the ground moving away from me. Around me, all was red. I was on the dragon. Tall, grey towers appeared in the distance. A castle. The dragon circled over the ruins, and I saw the shadows of tiny people moving along the rocks. Tourists, I thought. Then a dragon flapped his wings, and the next moment, the castle was back to its full glory. We flew on towards Carmarthen Bay, where we landed on a white sand. The dragon let me off. "Do you want to play football?" the dragon asked in a deep, rumbling voice. "Sure," I replied, unfazed by the giant speaking. I pulled the football from my bag whilst the dragon drew the outlines of the pitch. I placed the ball on the kick-off line. We started at once. The dragon started with the ball and played towards my goal. He kicked the ball up in the air and bicycle-kicked it with his tail. He shot it into the goal, slipping past my fingers. I grabbed the ball and dribbled it through the huge legs of the dragon and into his goal. We were tied. It was the dragon's turn now, and after staying his last goal, I knew I was in it for a treat. He kicked it into the air and air dribbled it towards me. All I could do was sit and wait for him to take a shot. This was it. He was closing in. He booted the ball towards the top right-hand corner. I flew at the ball, trying to catch it, and yet it was too fast. It brushed the tips of my fingers, but I couldn't stop it. The whistle blew the end of the match, and the dragon was victorious. He blew fire into the air, making the sky turn orange. As I approached to congratulate him, I heard a voice resonating. "Next stop to Haverfordwest." I shut up, looking around. I was still on the train. It had all been a dream. Looking out the window, I saw Bumpy and his black and white sheepdog Cherry waiting on the platform. And this is the reason why we need no cats.
Thank you, Sophie, and thank you, Teo. I think Sophie mentioned a very important thing there when she spoke. She mentioned about going to libraries on Saturday afternoons. And for all of you who have completed the public consultation, one of the proposals was to close on Saturday afternoons, which is quite ludicrous. Can you imagine that? We would lose a whole generation of potential authors, but not just that. We, you know, it closed on a Saturday afternoon is a ridiculous proposal. I can't even politely put into words what I want to say about that. Okay, the next speaker, Greg Cullen from Cardiff People's Assembly. Greg has been fighting for many, many years against the cuts that have been inflicted upon us by Cardiff Council. I mentioned the libraries earlier, but also, I don't know if many of you remember Cardiff Without Culture in 2016. That was a fantastic campaign, and Greg was a part of that. And that was another successful campaign where our public pressure made the council change their minds. So over to Greg.
Thank you. When I told a friend of mine that I was speaking at this rally today, he said, "Just talk about the contracts. Just talk about the contracts, otherwise people won't listen to you." Well, I'm not going to talk about the contracts. I'm going to talk about the context. The context in which we live and are born into. That there is a basic rule in capitalism that says that it must invest the minimum in each commodity in order to gain the greatest profit. Unfortunately, under capitalism, we are also treated as commodities. And as we can see in our education system, and we can see now with cuts across cultural and art services, they want to invest the minimum in us as commodities in order to produce the commodities that we then have to buy back for more than it costs to make them. That's the rule of capitalism, and it is humiliating. It takes away our human dignity, our autonomy, and our right to have our claim over public resources, including where we live, our cities, and everything around us. That improves our quality of life, because we are not just here to be the servants of capitalism. We are spiritual animals first and foremost. And we have a right to explore our potential. In the 1970s, there was a major review of education, the largest since the Norwood Act in 1944. And the strapline of that huge report was this, and it's still, I think, one of the most beautiful sentences and beautiful ideas I carry dear to me every day. And that is, the purpose of teaching is to educate the whole of a person for the whole of their lives. Now, that doesn't mean that the teachers continue to teach us all the whole of our lives, but that we give children the tools of analysis, the ability to research, this word called wonder, to constantly seek and ask what goes on in our universe, to understand it, to have a passion for learning that goes on throughout the whole of their lives. That was the purpose of that report, but it didn't last long. In fact, it began to be gradually dismantled by the then Labour Education Secretary, Shirley Williams, and was rapidly accelerated, of course, with the election of Thatcher in 1979 and the appointment of the ideologue of New Conservatism, now known as neoliberalism, Sir Keith Joseph, who was put into as Education Secretary, and he set about dismantling the university curriculum and schools curriculums that dealt with humanities and significantly history and social sciences. The most infamous quote from Sir Keith Joseph was that I want to see the removal of sociology from all schools and universities because it provides a porthole into society. What better reason for it? And we're standing outside a library now, and the libraries are portholes into society, but also portholes into the entire history of human civilization, culture, and learning. You walk in through a door of a library and talk to a skilled librarian, and they will give you access to all of that. Shut it down, disinvest, put the least money into the commodity of human beings for the maximum return. That's the rule that's being applied here, and it is taking away our dignity. I'm going to go back to one little other piece of history. I cut my teeth as a community artist in a revolutionary community arts centre called Chat's Palace in Hackney. It was, the building was an old library that had been donated by a philanthropist in the 19th century so that the poor of the East End could have access to education. Hackney County Council decided it was no longer fit for purposes and built a smashing great new library just down the road. But what was going to happen to this building with its Doric columns echoing Greek learning? It was going to be demolished. So artists and community activists went into the back door and occupied the building. We squatted it until we forced the GLC and Hackney Council to give us the building. And this was and it was used throughout the day by 7 days a week by people of all ethnicities, race, creeds, colours, you name it. It was an extraordinary hub of activity and artistic involvement by people who maybe had really not had that great an education, but we came together and produced arts and, throughout the year in the most extraordinary way. Now, why is that an example for us today? Because we have become placid. We have become too nice. In a world that is dominated and ruled by narcissistic psychopaths, we say, well, we're not going to behave like them because we're nice. But what are they doing to us? They are taking away our right to protest. They are taking away our ownership of public resources. Privatization across the board, no matter where you look, has witnessed the greatest transfer of public wealth into private hands in human history. And that's happened. That is happening, and it's continuing to happen. Unless we say we are not commodities. We are not going to be humiliated and treated as commodities any longer. We want to reclaim our human dignity, our autonomy. This is our city. These are our resources, and you are not going to take them away. We want them back. One final thought. There's an old proverb that the lamb spends its entire life in fear of the wolf, only to be eaten by the shepherd. Bear that in mind.
Thank you, Greg. Wow. Greg never fails to really get to the heart of the matter. Thank you. So we are nearly rounding up at this particular part of the protest. I know a lot of you came here to march, so you know you've got itchy feet, you want to get going, and we will be doing that very soon. But we were meant to have one last speaker here, Shavana Taj, the General Secretary of Wales TUC. As you know, it's a very busy time for the unions at the moment, so she can't make it, but she is 100% in support of this campaign and all of these campaigns. So I will read out her statement, and then I will hand over to Adam Johannes, who will then tell us what we are going to do next with regard to the march. Okay, from Shavana Taj. Working people need good jobs with decent wages and access to community spaces that offer the highest quality of cultural and arts facilities in our cities and towns. Wales TUC supports Cardiff Unison's calls that there should be no service cuts and no job losses at St David's Hall or in the city's libraries and museum. Libraries provide an essential service for many, especially struggling families whose children need extra study time to catch up post-pandemic, and a warm, accessible, safe space with free, good Wi-Fi. We must recognise that books and reading are not a luxury. They are essential services for aspirational working class families. Publicly owned concert halls provide an opportunity for children and families from all backgrounds to perform and watch a variety of performances. Privatisation puts this at risk. Like Cardiff's Unison branch, we oppose any proposal that may threaten workers' terms and conditions. I urge all councillors to get behind this campaign and not support any detrimental cuts to essential services. Stand with workers, listen to the communities that you serve.
Thank you. Those were the words of Shavana Taj, leader of the Welsh Trade Union Federation, Wales TUC. Another round of applause for Shavana. Now we're going to march very shortly. I just wanted to say a few quick words to wrap up. You know, I'm a great believer that as well as the outside world, there is an inner world which needs to be nourished and fed, just like the physical body. And the building behind me is a house of stories. There are thousands upon thousands of stories and books in that building. And stories are very important for children and young people, to how we learn empathy. We step into other people's shoes. We see the world through other people's ideas. We learn about other ideas and experiences far beyond our own. And so we're talking about something which changes human lives. Public libraries are the second most popular public service in this country after our National Health Service. But there's a national libraries crisis. 1,300 libraries have closed across the UK since 2010. A quarter of library staff have lost their jobs. there are millions less books in circulation. And so we have to really draw a line in the sand and say no more library cuts in Cardiff or anywhere else. And I think the other thing that we have to remember is that, austerity politicians, they try and confront us with impossible choices. They say, do you want Meals on Wheels, social care, daycare for the elderly, or do you want libraries, museums and concert halls? And I think we have to say we need it all. And the reality is all of it's being cut. We really need councils to stop making these cuts and fight the UK government for the money our towns and cities need. But we can't have another 12 years of managed decline. And just my final thought before we march, and just wait for when we march, we'll assemble behind this banner and behind the other banners and then march, is I believe that inside every human being there is an artist. Inside every human being there is a novel. Inside every human being there is a painting. And if you don't believe this is true, take a look at the youngest children in our society. What do? They love to draw, they love singing, they love rhymes, they love stories, they love to paint. There is something about our society that knocks that out of children, where we become cogs in the machine. So in a certain sense, I think, when we're marching today for public libraries, for the Museum of Cardiff, for St. David's Hall, we're marching for a new kind of human being and a new kind of society where all our creative faculties are liberated, where creativity and the arts are placed at the centre of our society. We're fighting, as our speaker said, we're fighting for bread and roses. So thank you everyone for coming. Please rally behind our banner if you can, and we'll start marching in about 2 minutes as we sort of sample up. Oh yeah, one more thing. No cuts! No cuts! No cuts! No cuts!